If you find you're unsettled listening today, reach out to a trusted friend or go to tradespodcast.com and click on resources.
We are men in the trades forging health in the drug poisoning crisis. This is
Off the Clock Toolbox Talk.
Trigger warning, today's episode mentions ideas and methods of suicide. Please dial 988, the suicide crisis line, to get help. Welcome back to Off the Clock Toolbox Talk. Today we are featuring guest James Boseley from Pain, BC. And we also have Trevor Botkin back with us co-hosting today. Welcome back, Trevor.
Yeah, happy to be here. Excited to speak with James today.
And James ran into you a few weeks ago, and you have a background in construction in the oil field, correct?
Yep, that's right.
And now somehow, I want to find out how you got connected with Pain BC, and you actually work for Pain BC now. And tell us your story.
Yeah, it goes back to my small town, Alberta, and working in the oil field and just having that mentality. I started it early 90s, I guess. And, there was times if somebody had something to say to you, they'd start to swing, they'd slap the shit out of you or whatever, or try to. And, that's kind of what I grew up with. If there was something wrong, you didn't really talk about it, especially pain, because you got made fun of that you're a wuss or whatever. And I spent a lot of years doing that. Then I worked a little bit working for my dad in agriculture, where we actually had, a corral cleaning company. So we'd go around, clean out the corrals. So again, another culture where you don't talk about your pain, you don't talk about your mental health, none of that, because there's no time, especially the corral cleaning, because we had a short window. You had to get it done when you had good weather, because the frost comes. And in Alberta, you can have that froze up shit literally
for months.
for up to 6 months kind of thing at times. So it was hard work. And then I also had a little Bobcat service, so I was doing my own construction thing. And again, there was times I remember I got bit doing just an estimate, and I got stung by I don't know what it was, but my knee swelled up. I couldn't walk or anything, so I was on crutches. So I pulled my truck up to the Bobcat, hopped from the truck into the Bobcat, with IV hanging out of my arm, doing IV injections every couple hours and running Bobcat. So that was the mentality, didn't stop. Go and get more IV to push through my veins when I was off work. So that's how I grew up. And I mean, I come out here in 2016, fall of 2016, when the oil field kind of crashed. We went from 76 employees to 16.
Wow.
And so I decided to come out here and be close to my family, because I was at a bad place too, if we're going to talk about mental health. And I know, Trevor, you've shared your story too, where with my severance pay from the company, I went and bought a rifle. And I made sure when I picked it up that I could reach the trigger and have it in my mouth, kind of thing.
Wow.
Because I'd had enough. I'd had a really roller coaster life of, doing my best, but something would happen, blew out my knee, have something else go on. So it was just a struggle with mental health, and I didn't understand it at all.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I looked into different things. I'd had counselors, and at times the counselors are like, well, maybe you should be in my position, because I don't know what to tell you, but you seem to be doing better than what I could do for you. And I'm like, well, what the hell? That's not really what you want to hear.
I think a lot of time what's missing is this acknowledgement that there's no other more fruitful place to go other than where you were, and you can't do it anymore. Right?
Well, and I think a lot of them, they're not trauma informed
Mm-hmm.
to understand the background of where that trauma came from, that you're feeling that way. Because they're looking at, it's just like doctors. You go in, you've got a cut on your hand or whatever, they take care of that cut. But sometimes, why did you get that cut? What was going on? It could have been a fight.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up fighting. It's hard to tell that I'm that person now, but I mean, I had no other way to show my emotions than just swinging with anybody. because I didn't know how else to do it. That's
Yep.
how my family was. That's the town that I grew up in. It was, knuckle up and get at her.
Yeah.
And now that I've had that time to kind of figure it out, I know it goes back to that early childhood trauma, and those are the things that aren't getting talked about. And I come out here, I trying to do my best with that mindset I had, and it was frustrating because I was making 39.50 an hour in Alberta when I left, and I came out here and I was making 18 an hour driving truck, hauling disposal bins all over the island, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
This is crazy. And I was working up to 75 hours a week.
Hmm.
And on May 8th, I fell about of 2018, I think it was. I fell about 8, 9 feet in one of those bins. I was putting a tarp on and I stepped on a piece of cardboard and I dropped.
Oh no.
And I just I get adrenaline and I don't feel pain when I've got adrenaline. So
Yeah.
I knew something wasn't right, but I just kept going. Um, the site supervisor, he came flying up the bin's ladder and, are you okay? Are you okay? Because I screamed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I'm fine. So I was embarrassed too. So I finish it up, get going,
Totally.
work the rest of the day. And by the end of the day, I'm like, this doesn't feel right. So I'm sleeping, went to take a step out of bed to go have a bathroom break in the middle of the night, and I dropped to my knees because I couldn't put pressure on my foot. So the next morning, got up, went to work, hobbling around, could barely walk, and I ended up working like that for 4 months. And the reason I went off was because I was trying to get into a different bin, and I tore my stomach. So I had an umbilical hernia that I had to go off for surgery. And during that time, I had a specialist appointment because nobody was telling me what was wrong.
Oh wow.
And so, like my foot, of course, I could barely stand on it. I phoned the specialist and I said, can I get in earlier? Because I'm in so much pain. And his receptionist said if it was that bad, he would have seen you already.
Wow.
So it was 6 months before I seen him. And when I walked in, he said, where's your cast? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said,
Unreal.
well, you should have been in an air cast this whole time for the past 6 months. I said, did you tell my doctor that? Did you tell? I
Yeah.
said, I phone your office. I get kind of chewed out and, made feel bad that I'm trying to get in early. So it was a nightmare. And it took over a year to find out the extent of the damage. And I'd shattered my heel. I broke my leg. I broke my hip. And I had a bulging disc in my back.
Goodness.
And and you go to a doctor and you're allowed to talk about one thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, I'm in a lot of pain. It feels like I'm stepping on a ice pick every time I take a step. And my back is killing me. And the doctor says, well, you're limping pretty badly. So that makes sense. And it made sense to me,
Hmm.
but let's look into it. Well, that's a separate appointment.
Yeah.
And when you're well, at the time I was fighting for workers' comp and trying to travel up and down, the cost of fuel, everything else. Because at the time, I think the fuel had gone crazy, or maybe not
Oh
quite
yeah.
yet, but it was up around 2 or higher than 2 for a while there, and so it was hard to make ends meet,
Hmm.
and getting cut off, and then having to get a lawyer to fight to get me back on, and
Unbelievable.
the list went on and on and on. I went a year and a half where I I fought with Worksafe and they finally back paid me a year and a half wages because I proved that things
Yeah.
were messed up.
Hmm.
And even then, they completely uh, denied my back. They said that your back it could have happened anytime. But when I seen their doctors, they said, well, if you fell to from that height, and I'm a big guy,
Mm.
so if you're going to shatter your heel, break your leg, break your hip, your back is going to get messed up too. The
Yeah.
only thing they covered was my heel and my knee, which was never
Unreal.
on the claim ever. My knee was never on the claim. So I ended up with, I think, four different claims or something like that, trying to get it covered. And at that point, they're just like, deny, deny, deny. And I went through as far as I could without getting a lawyer. And at the time, to get a lawyer, nobody would talk to me without a $5,000 retainer down. So what are you left with?
Yeah.
You're screwed.
Yeah.
So and at that point, well, that was the start of it. And I was off for just over 6 years and fighting, trying to advocate for myself, going through absolute hell with my mental health. Um, I was living in a camper full of mold and mice and everything else.
Wow.
And, I had people that were saying they wanted to help me and get me into a better living situation. And then all of a sudden they change their mind and say, there's a lot of people that have it a lot worse than you. So maybe you should start being thankful. And I'm sitting there
Wow.
going, okay. Like
Wow.
I was at a
Wow.
point where I was ready to end my life at all
Yeah.
kinds of, at any
Yep.
moment.
Yep.
And the only reason I got out of that camper is my grandma had died and she left money to my mom, who's been gone for over 20 years. So lucky enough, my sister and I got that money. So I was able to put it towards getting a fifth wheel that a buddy of mine sold to me and gave me a good deal. That's the only reason I got out of it. So even
Wow.
now I'm still living in that. And it's not, it's not the best
Yeah.
living, but you deal with it the way you can. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's how I'm dealing with now. And we all know the cost of living out here. I mean, to
Yeah.
go even get an apartment, it's
Yeah.
pretty much
It's
one of my
insane.
paychecks. Like it's crazy.
James, as I'm hearing you tell your story, and I'm hearing lots about physical pain and like breakages and injury and everything else, but as you're having to fight for your basic rights that you've paid
Hmm.
into as a
Yeah.
worker and all this stuff, I'm hearing emotional pain and emotional
Oh,
injury on
brutal.
top of that. And, we usually just like, oh, yeah, that's mental health or whatever. But the pain and I first heard Gabor Mate say this in a short film, and he said your body doesn't know the difference between physical pain and emotional pain. So
Hmm.
if someone stabbed you in the leg and you got a brain scan, your certain part of your brain would be lit up showing that you're in pain. And if somebody broke your heart or rejected you somehow, like somebody that was important to you, and you got a
Same
brain
thing.
scan, exactly the same part of your brain
Yep.
is
Right.
lit up. Your brain doesn't know the difference between physical pain and emotional pain. And so
Hmm.
it's like a double injury, and we just don't validate those things and understand the impact of those things. If you're having to fight for, like, it feels like you're fighting for your very existence,
Hmm.
then you can't, like, you're both your physical and your emotional are injured. And I believe that the spiritual realm was also involved with both of those things too, and then you get
For
spiritually injured
sure.
as well, and that's what creates that devastation of like, what the fuck do I do now? And then the only
Hmm.
Well,
options, that's where the brain begins to think about things related to suicide and self-harm,
Hmm.
because you just don't have any personal resources left.
Yeah.
it's just like, man, it makes me angry, dude, because
Yeah,
this
me
isn't the
too.
first time I've heard a story similar to yours,
No, that's the thing. My story
you
is
know,
not
and
unfamiliar.
it's not uncommon that you go and we work our asses off in the industry and we sell our bodies to make a living.
Yeah.
Our bodies get damaged. The medical community has a complete lack of awareness to the extent we are physically demanded of on
Hmm.
job sites. And when we do break and we go to Worksafe, we're treated like we're lazy and trying to game the system. And it's insanity.
Yeah.
It's like they think you're a liar. You're just trying to scam the government. Like I was fighting to get my pension because I wanted to go to further my education and a few other things. And I just the culmination of everything that I was going through, like I started going down a really dark path.
Yeah.
My mental health was probably the worst it's been in a long time. And a buddy of mine that he knows everything, he was even scared. And I was talking to the WorkSafe case manager and I got her scared. She got the mental health worker on there, but I was being honest, like how I was. I was
Yeah.
mad. I was pissed off. And then another caseworker came on and he goes, just because you're not getting your way doesn't mean you can pout and think that that's going to make us give in.
Fuck's sakes.
And I
Makes me
swear,
so
if you would have,
angry.
Oh yeah, if he would have been within range, he
Yeah.
would have got the shit kicking of a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No matter how
Just
sore I was, I would
reinforces
have.
this idea
Yeah.
that nobody's got our back. Like we
Well,
are
that's it, and that's
alone.
it, and that's it. That's exactly it. And like I said, with the way that my life had kind of been, I never felt supported, really, ever. I guess. Um, like I grew up with a alcoholic dad, so my mom she was the best she could be, but she was trying to support us of not having him come at us because he was violent,
Yeah.
and she was trying to support her family too,
Mm-hmm.
or like
Hmm.
her siblings, because her dad died. He committed suicide when she was 6, I believe, 5 or 6. So she basically started raising her siblings right from that age, kind of
Wow.
thing, because her mom was working nonstop too. So I started seeing now, like you mentioned, Gabor Mate. I took his course and a few other courses, and I started to see how all that stuff from back then it created my upbringing because
Mm-hmm.
that's the only way they knew how to be too. So the way
Yeah.
they knew how to be carried on to us because
Hmm.
they never were able to understand how to look at their own shit, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a pretty crazy path to say the least. Like I said, I started looking into my own, and I'll be completely honest. I don't know if this is going to be allowed to be mentioned, but like I went down the path of ayahuasca. That was
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
one of the things that I did, and it immediately started showing me that even though I was pissed off at my old man the way he was, because he's the one that if I came home and I said somebody was bullying me, you get back there, you fight him. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what I did. I had to. And if I didn't fight them and I got home, I got in shit anyways.
Yeah.
So I started seeing how the way he wasn't his fault either. That was a learned
No.
lesson as well. So I started seeing all of this. I started seeing of
Yeah.
why I became who I am.
The intergenerational trauma.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's more rapid than what we really understand. I
Well,
think anyways.
I think it's something shared in our common humanity is like
Yes.
we all have some extent of intergenerational trauma.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't exclusive to one community. It's absolutely in mega mode in certain communities in our
Oh
country,
yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
felt universally
Yeah.
amongst everyone. You
And
know?
it's
Yeah.
really an outcome, and this has been coming to my mind a lot in our conversation too, of colonial ways of being. I think as people, we're to the point now where we're like, this is fucking stupid. Like, let's not keep doing this. Let's not keep injuring ourselves psychologically, biologically, spiritually, everything, socially. Let's stop these
Yeah.
injuries. And so people are starting to do the work now, do the psychological work to begin healing, but our systems are still all colonial based. So you're talking about, how Worksafe is making you justify your very existence and make you feel
Yeah.
like an
Hmm.
idiot. And I see that with all the other systems. I see that with the Ministry of Children and Families. I see that with education. I see that with the medical system, where you're saying people aren't believed.
What is that thing I heard? That story of the veteran years ago. I heard a story. He had every year he had to prove he still didn't have a leg.
Oh
Like,
my God.
yeah, no, it's serious. It's a
Holy.
not an uncommon story. Yeah, he had to like every year he had to for his benefit to apply to keep his benefit. He had to prove his leg hadn't grown back. That's how incredibly terrible it was. Like,
Wow.
but James, like you're probably one of the most inspiring dudes I've talked to in a long, long time,
Oh,
man. Like
thanks, man.
I'm so glad you're on solid ground. Yeah, like I don't think people understand. If I can't work, if I can't physically do my job, there's a shame reflex.
Yeah.
There's a shame
Oh,
reflex.
yeah. Yeah.
That's the base level. And then you're insinuating that I'm doing this on purpose and won't give me my benefits so I can get better and get back to work. That's just compounding. But
Yeah.
my immediate first reaction, if I cannot physically work, is I'm ashamed of myself,
Of course. Yep.
you know?
Yep.
And
And
so, and I think
that's
that's
exactly how I was
very
feeling.
common amongst especially skilled trades.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I was feeling because I was even having friends and family like, really, you're not feeling any better? Like, What's going
Yeah.
on there? But I'd start labeling all the stuff I was doing, and I'd say, "Do you have anything else that I should do?" And they're like,
Yeah.
"I never even thought of half the stuff you are doing."
What a great
But
way to
it's
approach that too. It must have taken a lot of patience.
well, I'm not always patient. Like I was starting to get to the point where I was yelling and screaming at the wrong
Yeah.
people. I
Hmm.
admit
Okay.
it. I was down that
Yeah.
path where I just lost it.
The holes we get into, I
Yeah.
mean, the pressure of like, I'm going to get back to work and then I've got this mountain of debt I have to
Hmm.
sift through, right? Like there's so much to it and family connections and relationships, like you said, you're yelling and screaming at the wrong people and that's damage that needs to be repaired. And, like I'm sure you know that. I mean, but
Hmm.
it's not just a physical injury and getting back to work. There's so much more to it. And then the pain
Yeah.
you have to live with that's not going to go anywhere. That needs to be managed. And
Yeah,
so,
that's frustrating in its own. Like I get up at
yeah,
around 4:30 every morning and go to the pool and
wow.
because I come and hang out at my buddy's place because he has better internet for me. Um, but even after I've been at it pretty solid for at least 3 months, I mean, if I go for a walk on the sidewalk, I I can't go far. Like
Wow.
I'm in pain, and I know I'm a bigger guy, but even trying to lose weight during that time, when you're stressed out, the cortisol levels and everything else, like I've talked to doctors and nutritionists, they're like, you're just up against the wall. Like it's going to take
Hmm.
time because of
It's an
everything you're
uphill
dealing
battle.
with. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's terrible. Like I'll be
Yeah.
brutally honest, and this is embarrassing, but through all that depression and stress, I put on at least 100 pounds,
Wow.
Hmm.
Okay.
and I wasn't small to begin with. So
Hmm.
it's hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are things that just aren't being thought of. It's just like people, well, no, you got to lose some weight. Well, you got to do this. You got to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah, no shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
At
You
the end
think
of the
it's
day, I'm
easy?
exhausted
Fuck.
trying to do the smallest of things, like trying to do uh, a sink full of dishes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
By the end of the day, I can barely stand up because I've been spasming for hours trying to do dishes.
Wow.
Wow.
There's so much more to it than
Yeah.
most people will understand.
Tell us about Pain BC.
Yeah, so PayBC has been getting a lot of calls from people in the trades, and I've also heard people that had looked up pain on the website. I think Karen, you'd said that to me, that looked up the
Well, I looked
website and
up
tried
Pain
to find.
BC. I'd heard of
Oh,
it,
okay,
and I was hoping to get somebody on our podcast from Pain BC. But when I looked, and it was over a year ago that I looked, and I just
yeah,
didn't see anything obvious that was connecting to like men in the trades and construction
yeah,
and whatnot. So,
yeah,
so I didn't get any further with it. So now I'm like,
hmm,
okay, how do people access Pain BC? Why should they access it? What's there? Like, how
yeah.
would it benefit them?
They've been doing some research on it and trying. They seen the numbers of the amount of pain that people are in the trades, and that nobody's accessing anything. And so many companies, they're talking about the health and safety. They're talking about the opiate epidemic. They're talking about those things, which are awesome conversations, but they're not addressing the pain part. And
Right.
we
Because it
felt that
plays
was
such a huge role in everything.
yeah, and that's a huge part that's being completely overlooked. So they decided that they wanted to address that. They had a whole bunch of people apply, and then they got stuck with this face. So um, I'm excited to be a part of it because I mean, I get goosebumps. I get passionate. I probably don't even make sense of what I'm talking about because I get so passionate at times and I start rambling. But like, well, it just kicked off 2 months ago. First thing that's going to be coming out is a text support line. That's going to be a soft launch in on May 12th, I believe, where it's going to be you can text in, say you're having these problems, and it's going to go either two ways. If you're somebody in the trades, it's going to go our way or my way, and we can address that. If it's just other people in the public, they can go another way and talk to somebody else. We're going to try and have trade specific talk where people
Nice.
feel heard. And eventually that's going to turn into a peer support group, which we're not sure how that's looking like yet. No, what you guys are doing, I think, is exactly what needs to be done as far as a peer support group. And I do hope that we can work together in some way. And a lot about education. Pain BC, their website is full of education. And for anybody, they can come in and they can talk to somebody and try to get on. There's a pain support line where they can just phone in and talk to somebody. There's coaching for health, which is what I did, where you actually get like a coach and you talk about what's going on. You can talk about what you are doing. They can suggest things if because they've got whether it be some meditation, they can offer resources. They've got a ton of resources that they have. And then there's little online courses that you can do that actually teach you what pain is, which is good because people, they hear chronic pain and that can be maybe intimidating, but if there's the acute pain, so within 3 months of, like, say, a broken finger or whatever, it can be addressed, right? And it's done with. But that chronic pain, that's the thing that we're really looking at, where what we were talking about earlier, that the trauma informed, where, there's a reason why you went from being in pain to chronic pain. And sometimes it's to do with those things mentally that we don't talk about. So there's a little bit of training on that. And I think it can always be worked on. And I think that, at least I hope that someday that's where, I can be, where people can phone me and talk to me about that and get into a deeper part of it. And, taking what I've learned, like from Gabor Mate, like compassion inquiry, and trace it backwards by those, because it's a more of a somatic approach where you're following those feelings of your body. Because it's not always that injury; it could be something else. Where all of a sudden you're realizing that little ting in your neck, a little pain, and what does that pain remind you of? Going back to that, and sometimes having those acknowledgments and going forward in our lives, and when that pain fires up, you can smile and nod and say, "I know what that is." Yeah. But now I'm at a point where I'm not that 5-year-old.
Yeah,
I'm this 112-year-old. And I
feels like it some days.
But now I can take control.
Yeah.
I don't have to.
I'll tell you what you are. You're the right guy for the job, James.
Thanks, man.
You've lived it. You're doing it. You've got a passion for giving back to others, which I got to say is not uncommon amongst people that have been through it and found some stability and contentment in their lives. I'm just nothing but impressed by you, brother.
It boggles my mind that pain's not being connected to the opiates and the prescriptions and all of that stuff. And I got an idea of why it's not.
Yeah.
But we need to just be accountable as humans and just address the elephant in the room, because it's a herd of elephants at this point with what's going on.
Yeah.
And, like, let's, even if we got to just check it off as, nobody's going to get in shit for it, let's just do it.
Yeah.
Let's quit talking about it and just do it, because
let's get to work.
It's beyond, it's beyond where it should be, in my opinion. Like, it's just heartbreaking to see people still dropping at this alarming rate.
It's inhumane. It's ultimately inhumane.
Yeah. We can do better. We have the means.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
We can afford to help everybody.
James,
that's the long and short of it.
Do you want to give your email address?
Well, you can come to the Pain BC website. And if you look at, I don't know all the links, but if you look at the staff, you'll find me in there. And I don't know if that links me to my website or not, or to my email. It doesn't,
because I tried that and it didn't.
But it's easy, because then you can see the spelling of my name.
Yeah.
So it's just james.boseley@painbc.ca. So they can see the spelling, Boseley, and they can get a hold of me. And I look forward to people reaching out, because we want all voices.
Off the Clock Toolbox Talk has been a Fraser House Society project, executive produced and co-hosted by Karen Jansen, managed by Delan Young on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. Production of this material has been made in part through a financial contribution from Health Canada. The views expressed herein do not necessarily reflect the views of Health Canada or Fraser House Society. The content of this podcast is conversation between people with living experience and should not be taken as professional advice. Know someone with chronic pain that just isn't getting better? Check out painbc.ca. Help save lives. Go to tradespodcast.com and click on the link under Enter to win a $200 grocery card. When you fill out the survey, you help us understand what's working and what's not. Each survey for each episode listened to is a separate entry. Information collected is for survey purposes only and is not shared. Help us, help you.